we have a lot of moms who feel incredibly guilty if they take time from their kids in order to do a business. But the reality is that
hello, and welcome back to the Blissful Mompreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Christina Hall, and I am so grateful you're tuning in today. I am thrilled to welcome the amazing Kelly Cronin to the show today. Kelly is an entrepreneur and real estate investor who has built multiple successful self-sustaining businesses, all while creating a life of freedom, adventure, and financial stability. She started her career as a veterinary technician, making just $20 an hour, but through intentional financial planning and strategic investments, she has transformed her career. Today, she oversees multiple veterinary clinics, runs a vacation rental business with properties in Puerto Rico, Alaska, and Wisconsin, and leads a speaking and consulting business with over 70,000 fans. What I find so fascinating about Kelly's story is that she has never let her businesses run her life. Instead, she intentionally designed her businesses in a way that supports her life while she also can provide for her family. So, Kelly, welcome again to the Blissful Mompreneur Podcast. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
You've been so intentional with your finances, from like stretching every dollar to investing in income-producing assets. Now, is that something that came naturally to you, or is it a skill that you had to develop over time?
Well, I think one of the things that I've really kind of benefited from is the fact that veterinary medicine doesn't pay incredibly well. I would like that not be the case, but we tend to be a little bit lower than a lot of the other health fields. And it's been a situation where, over time, I've really developed a lot of strategies just to get ahead a little bit, just to get past that paycheck to paycheck mentality, and just to make sure that I'm constantly thinking about tomorrow as opposed to just the moment that I'm in. And I think the other thing that it really has done is it's really taught me to kind of gamify how to really do the things that I want to do in life. So, for example, thinking in terms of travel, as someone who at my top end as a veterinary technician was making $20-some an hour, thinking about traveling seems pretty inconceivable. But we used a lot of strategies, such as me becoming a veterinary speaker, to actually pay for travel and make travel an actual, a financially forward thing. And that's just been something that I've been able to do kind of multiple times throughout my life. And a lot of people look at that and say, gosh, I just don't know how I would do that in my own life. But the reality is that there's a million different ways. There's a ton of different things that people are doing to actually make the things that they really enjoy something that actually adds to their bottom line as well. And I love exploring those options.
You mentioned that you tried to gamify this a little bit for you. So what are some other examples of how you gamify the, saving and investing and whatnot?
I think one of the most powerful things that I've been able to do, and, I really credit other people for this, I heard about something called travel hacking on episode number 9 of Choose a 5 podcast. And, they know that I tout this episode like nobody's business, but they taught about something called travel hacking. And travel hacking is really using opening credit cards and that opening bonus to actually be able to utilize those points to travel for free, essentially. And, anyone can do it, really. I think that people, even with poor credit, can do it. I would say if you've had problems controlling your credit in the past, that's not something I would at all recommend. But I think that when you think about things like that, you have daily expenses that you actually have to put on these credit cards, or not have to put on the credit cards, but have to pay for. And that might as well be something that you're doing that actually influences what you're able to do later. And I think that honestly, we've had a couple of trips. The most recent was 14 days to Greece that were virtually free. just because of the fact that we utilize our credit card points and our Marriott code points and really intentionally planned that travel in a way that actually allowed us to do it for almost no money.
Oh, that's so smart. Something I never considered, but you're right, because a lot of these cards, even the cards that you use all the time are always generating points, and then if you could
Mhm.
put that towards something that you really want to do, very, very smart.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it is, a lot of people say, gosh, it's just too complicated. But really, anything that you want in life, like you can figure it out. It's just a situation of having to do a little bit more work to figure it out. Certainly, us getting into the vacation rentals, especially me getting into the vacation rentals, I didn't have a lot of money for down payments. I didn't have a lot of operating cash. And in fact, that actually created an opportunity for me to do it in more incredible places, to really think outside the box. Things like an off-grid cabin in Utah. I was able to set my Zillow for what I had in hand on cash and just tour the country looking for places that were incredibly low in terms of overall cost and incredibly lending itself to a good vacation as well. For example, Vieques, Puerto Rico, it's one of those situations where here's this island paradise. It's incredible. There's more horses than people. The sunsets are beautiful. The food is incredible. Everything about it is just the most experiential vacation that you could ever imagine. But when you look at it, it's a little bit more difficult to get there. And if you think outside the box, there are a lot of places that could use total rehabs and that could use a little bit of love. And if you don't mind doing a little bit of the elbow grease, there's a lot of opportunity no matter where you look. And, I think we look at things and say, gosh, that's not attainable to us instead of, gosh, how do I attain that?
Yeah, that shift can really open up possibilities for you.
It
But
really
so,
can.
so often we just kind of shut down these thoughts that we have. But really, we should really listen to them, because usually within that, there's a lot of desire too, and we can really uncover what's important to us. And so you've done a lot of traveling. What would you say was like your favorite place you've ever been?
Oh, you can't do that. um, I think my favorite place that I've ever been is the place that I haven't been yet, honestly. I think that there is something so incredible about every place that you go. And, we get an opportunity to go places that we love multiple times. I just told you a little bit about Vieques. One of our other favorite places in the wide, wide world is Alaska. Every time that we drive out to our house from Anchorage, I spend the entire time up and downing my window to take pictures and screaming at every time I see a whale and just having so much excitement and so much anticipation for that trip and just sobbing because it's so beautiful. And I think honestly, it's a situation where you can find beauty just about anywhere. You can find beauty in the most sterile place on the planet in a city. You just have to look a little bit for it. But why not? Why not fill your life with adventure and finding those things? Why not um, try and get out a little bit and see the world?
For those that are interested in investing in real estate and whatnot, what advice would you give them? Like, how would they get started?
I think the biggest thing is to educate yourself. And there's so much out there that is actually free and available to you. We have a short-term rental class online that, it's a couple $100s, pretty inexpensive, but just making sure that you really understand before you get your feet wet. Really think about, hey, how much does this property cost me? How much operating capital do I have? Do I have a little bit of buffer? How can I think about getting this property for a more affordable price? Or how can I really stretch the dollars that I have for this? And just making sure that when you're doing any kind of real estate investing, that you're doing enough market research to make sure that you're not making a mistake. I think one of the things that I run into fairly often is people want to get into real estate investing and they want to jump in, and that's amazing, but they have to really think about, hey, is this property going to get better over time? Is there going to be some kind of gain in overall equity? Is there a potential that I've stretched myself too far with this property if I don't have it rented and potentially could lose it? Or is there a potential for this property, if I'm thinking about it as a vacation rental, is there a potential for this property to be utilized in a different way if they outlaw vacation rentals? Or, just trying to really think about things. And we've done a lot of due diligence on the places that we've actually looked at. And I'll say that thank God we did, because we've had multiple ones where, we've done the due diligence, we've gotten into it, and then come to find out something doesn't work out. We had looked at doing a tiny home village in Tierra Maria, New Mexico. Got all the way down the path. We already had a website. We already had a business plan. We already had a business license. We already had the state to sign off on allowing us to do it. Come to find out, as we were doing due diligence on the title itself, it turns out that the title was actually owned by 30 different people. And so you never know what you're going to find. And that's just one of the adventures that we've had in terms of trying to purchase these properties. But if you don't do that due diligence, could you imagine if we had purchased that property and then multiple people came up to assess ownership of it? That would have been incredibly hardship filled. It would have been devastating to us. But we've done the work to make sure that as much as possible, we have some buffer there.
Yeah, very, very smart. Because like you said, there are definitely a lot of risks involved as well. Oh boy. Good that you were able to dodge that. Now, if you could go back in time and give advice to your younger self, what would you say?
Start earlier. I started so early in terms of saving and in terms of really thinking financially forward. I was saving 50% of my income from the get-go, and living very, very frugally, roommates or living at home or whatever that looked like. Generally, lots of roommates. But had I actually started earlier, had I taken advantage of some of the things out there, for example, FHA loans, where you can actually get a loan based on a multifamily, potentially have that second part of the house actually paying your mortgage, and be able to afford that house a little bit earlier because of the fact that they use that potential rental income towards your ability to own that house. Had I had that jump, I would have been 3, 4, 5 houses or properties along in my growth. If I had started thinking about getting my technician specialty earlier in my life, if I had started thinking about, getting my MBA or growing into management earlier in my life, there's so many things that I think I did them at the right time for me. But had I had someone on my shoulder telling me what to do, I probably would have started them earlier. Probably would have gotten things kind of rocking, rolling earlier.
Yeah. So it's funny you say that because I recently was a guest on someone else's podcast and she asked a similar question. I had the exact same response that I just wish I started the things that I did sooner. I wish we did have the knowledge that we have now back then, right? But we don't.
Right?
We have to give ourselves grace. But it is that reminder that when we have that thought of something that we want to do, we just take action, be smart about it and, do your research and your due diligence and whatnot. But the sooner you take action, the fewer regrets you're going to have in life.
Yeah.
What's the biggest financial mistake you see other business owners making?
I think the biggest financial mistake that I see elsewhere is, not to harp on a subject, but lack of planning. It's one of those situations where there's so many free opportunities to really do some work ahead of time. And I think certainly for the short-term rental business, one of the things that I would love to see is there's a calculator for each property that you might invest in on bigger pockets. It's a incredibly good resource. It's free. It's easy to use. And it just helps you make sure that you're not getting over your head in terms of buying something that is incredibly expensive, putting a ton of rehab money into it, and pricing yourself actually out of that neighborhood, or pricing yourself to a point where you're stretched and you really have to rely on those rental incomes constantly. I think one of the things that has kept us a little bit slower growing is the fact that honestly, if I if I had no rental income in the next month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, I would still be able to afford all of the properties that we have. I can make payments on every single property, or I own them outright to the point where I would not be financially strapped to make the payments for all of those. And I will say that I always feel a little bit hampered because my significant other says, gosh, you should finish one before you start the next. Don't love that. Don't love that. But he's really, really right. If we can have something where we have a cash forward movement on one before we move into the next, it just gives me that financial safety, especially as a single mom, right? My significant other is not married to me. And so, is he responsible for contributing to the business? No, only in work ethic, right? And so I have to really be cognizant of how can I make sure that it's sustainable going forward? And how can I make sure that I'm just constantly thinking about, hey, if tomorrow everything blows up, how am I going to be okay?
Yeah. Because you never know. Anything could
Right.
happen, right? So many entrepreneurs feel like they have to always hustle harder to make more money. But you've built financial stability through smart planning and strategy, like we've been talking about. So, how can small business owners shift from constantly working to starting to have their money work for them?
I think one of the biggest things to think about is every time you spend money on a business, it should net you more money. And so I'm sure you've heard of the return on investment or the ROI with anything. I generally try to make sure that every dollar that I'm spending has an ROI. And so even if I'm thinking about, hey, off putting some of my work to someone else, I'm making sure that instead of just taking that time and doing XYZ with it, I'm making sure that if I'm off putting work to someone else, I am utilizing the time that I've then saved to actually do something that's going to forward momentum my business. For example, I've had a couple of times where I've had really you know really made an effort to bring in a virtual assistant and to do some of my social media and things like that. And I create things. I don't know if you've heard of Tango before, but it just allows you to create a how to really, really quickly on anything that you might do on the computer. And it records the steps. It allows you to put in notes. It allows you to put in video if you need to do that. And it really can allow you to take that virtual assistant and say, here are some low level, low risk things that I can have you do for me that take a ton of time, that don't take a lot of my brain power. And then I make sure that if I'm going to bring in a virtual assistant for that amount of time, that I've then scheduled myself for things that are really high reward or high input, high touch items at that same amount of time, so that I'm always thinking in terms of how am I utilizing my time best. I don't know. Have you ever had one of those friends who says, gosh, I just don't have time to do all the things that you do?
All the time.
All the time. And so I think about that, and I would love to do a time study someday on someone who says, gosh, I just don't have the time for what you do, because I don't think that I have much time. And I think that a lot of times it's just about trying to figure out how to use time better, right? When I'm working out at the gym, my minute of downtime is spent scheduling my social media posts. Or when I'm sitting in the bath enjoying the bath, that's a time where maybe I might watch a show. Or if I'm watching a show, I'm double dipping and answering emails. There's always something that I'm doing or thinking about that is high stakes, and something that I'm doing or thinking about that is getting me further in life, whether it be washing the dishes and recording some, some notes to myself or whatever that might look like.
Yeah. I mean, time is without a doubt our most valuable asset, and we really should treat it that way, and
When
with so much care and so much intention. And I oftentimes, when I have conversations with friends or even family, that will say, like, they'll complain, that they don't have enough time for things and whatnot. And in the back of my head, I'm like, I'm also empathetic. I do understand to some degree what they're going through. But if they were more intentional with their time, they could create so much more, and have far less stress.
I think it's all about kind of thinking in terms of what are my top priorities and how am I honoring those?
Yes. I don't know if you ever heard the Tim Ferriss quote, and I'm going to say it wrong, but it's from his book, The 4 Hour Work Week,
Sure.
where he's like, it's not that you don't have enough time, you don't have the right priorities.
Hmm.
And it was probably like 5, 6 years ago that I read that and I went, whoa, it was like I needed to hear that. And now every time I have those thoughts of like, oh, I don't have enough time, I go, wait a second. No, you do have enough time. We all have the same 24 hours.
Hmm.
It's just some people are like use their time very wisely and others do not, and then who do you want to be? So,
When I think some of it is, we have a lot of moms who feel incredibly guilty if they, if they take time from their kids in order to do a business. But the reality is that you're giving your kids such a really good role model to look up to. It's really incredible to show them what work ethic looks like. But B, there's opportunities to actually involve your kids too. I mean, I don't know if everyone kind of goes this route, but a lot of my speaking opportunities, I will take my daughter with me. It's been incredible to be able to show her the world. And yes, I'll lose an hour or two or three to speaking. She might have to have some patience during that, but it's definitely a situation where the fun that we have as mommy daughter time it far outweighs any time that she might have to spend, you know, keeping herself busy or keeping herself entertained. And I think that honestly, I do a veterinary technician cruise every year, and every year she's gone with me since I've solo run it. And it's just been a situation where, it's pretty incredible to say that you got to take your daughter to Haiti or to Jamaica, or, next year is to Dominican Republic. And it's an experience that I would never ever trade. She actually helps with the cruise. It's a really incredibly good bonding time.
that is so nice that you're able to create those memories with your daughter and give her those experiences. And, a lot of people can't. My kids are very young. I have a 2.5-year-old and 5.5-year-old. And it's like, how could I incorporate them in my work? And I actually do to some extent because I own a music studio. That's like my first business. And when we have events and things like that, I bring my daughter along. And like you said, also like you being the role model, that is tremendous, and showing them what is possible for their lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I will say, my daughter went to her first speaking event when she was 5 or so. She sat in the back and she watched dinosaur videos. And about halfway through, I must have been doing a great bang up job of speaking on anesthesia and boring everyone to death. And it was a real question as to whether, I was anesthetizing the audience or talking about anesthesia. And she toddles up to the front with her dinosaur book and she says, if you guys are bored, I'm prepared to now speak on dinosaurs. It was frankly the best interlude that I've ever come up with on a speaking engagement.
Oh, that is great. That is great. She's like natural.
She is
That's wonderful.
she's dangerous.
Oh, so cute. And how old is she now?
She is now 14.
Oh my goodness. 14. Yeah, so teenager now.
Teenager now, and now she has her own entrepreneurial ideas, and it's just a lot of fun to watch her grow into this as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then she'll always have you as a resource.
Absolutely.
Where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your work?
Oh, absolutely. We have a couple websites. So www.croninscastles.com is the short-term rental website. And www.vettechlife.com is actually for all of my veterinary side of businesses and continuing education. You can find me on Facebook under Vet Tech Life or Kelly Cronin or Cronin's Castles or our individual rentals. Our cute little geodesic dome in Alaska is called In a Nutshell. Our roundhouse with a lofted bedroom in Vieques, Puerto Rico, again, where the brightest bio bay in the world is. That is Vieques Sea House. And trying to think on Instagram, we have Cronin's Castles and vettechlife.com. And LinkedIn is certainly another way to catch me. Would really love to connect with anyone if you have questions or if you want to get into some short-term rentals, if you want to get into speaking engagements or whatever you'd like to do. My goal in life is to bring as many people with me as I possibly can. So anything that I can do to help, any of your listeners grow, please let me know.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. And we will put all of that information in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Blissful Mompreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a fellow mompreneur who might benefit from the advice. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, click the notification bell, and leave a comment below letting me know your biggest takeaway. It helps me reach more amazing women just like you. Thank you again for being here, and until next time, keep pursuing your bliss.